Hello everybody, Keith here again. I've got an unboxing video. I've agreed a plant swap with Zane Rapper and to test the post. She put hers into the post. And this little sweetheart is Phalaenopsis mannii, a little species one. So that's lovely, that'll go beautifully into my collection. I'm pleased with that. That's looking smashing, thank you Zane. But she's also sent me some small plants, and I don't know necessarily what these are, so we'll see what's in this tissues, whether we've got any. Oh yes, and we've got labels for them. Oh my word. Dendrobium jenkinsii. That is a tiny little thing. I don't do mounts, but perhaps I'm going to have to. Goodness. Okay. That's one. See if I can do anything with that. That'll be interesting. Oh grief. I mean, it's a Talumnia. Oh, blimey, species Talumnia. Goodness gracious me. Yes. Interesting. Goodness me. I always wanted to try a Talumnia, but that is tiny. That is absolutely tiny. Goodness, when she said she was sending me some small plants, she wasn't wrong, was she? This one feels a little bit bigger. Okay, I can see some pseudo balls rather than canes, so what I wonder is this. Oh, Borbophyllum fascinator. That is tiny. That is tiny, but oh dear, we've got some, got a nice new growth here. Looks like it's a climber. Something's failed just there. But my word, that's quite something, that is. So Zane is having some of my Shelob Tolkien that I split when I repotted it the other day, and I think that I may well have come out the better end of the bargain, because these are gorgeous plants, very, very lovely plants. So I thought I was getting one, I actually got 4. So Phalaenopsis mannii, Bulbophyllum fascinator, Dendrobium jenkinsii, and this tiny wee scrap, which is Talumnia hawkensiana. My word. Not only have I got some extra plants, I've got some challenges in front. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'll look forward to seeing you next time. I thought I'd try and round off by trying to pot up these new orchids. I'm not sure what I'm doing with any of them, if I'm absolutely honest, particularly the Talumnia. I'm going to try different things. This one has very clearly been in moss. So I'm going to put it in moss, and I'm going to put it in this mesh pot so that the moss will dry. I know these like to stay moist. I don't think they like to stay absolutely wringing wet any more than any other orchid does. So I want this to dry. Now if it starts to dry too much, I'll put this inside something else. But it gives me room for all the growths. We've got a new growth here. There's been a failed new growth. There's been a failed new growth here. So that I think can probably just come off, because it's not going to do any good to anybody. It's not likely to strike out again. But you never know with these things, do you? Any orchid. But we've got a new growth coming off one of these bulbs. We might get another one, we might not. But as long as I've got one, I shall be happy. As long as I've got that one. And we've got, just in front of my fingernail, I don't know whether we're going to pick that up properly, but yes, I think we are. There's a tiny, tiny little root just emerging from along that rhizome, or possibly where the bulb is going to appear when it starts to grow. So that is good news. So I'm going to put that in moss. Keep it moist, but I'm going to let it dry between waterings. Or not dry, I'm going to let it go damp. I'm going to let it be fairly wet to start with, then I'm going to let it go damp. It looks very much to me as if this jenkinsii has been on a mount. It's fairly flat this way, there's nothing this side, but I can't do mounts, it's just not realistic in my setup. So what am I going to do? Well, what I thought, if this had been on a mount, it's going to want to dry out fairly quickly, which is what all of them do, but probably not too quickly, and it's quite dehydrated as this one, although we have got quite a few new roots coming from here and there, so it ain't dead by a long, long way. So what I'm planning to do with this is put bark and moss mix in this, and possibly even lay it on a layer of moss on the top, so it gets plenty of hydration. It can start to reflate some of these canes, and hopefully we'll see some more growth. I'm aware that Tolumnias are a bit special. From what Roger's said, in particular, they're twig epiphytes. You don't find them on moss, they simply sit on the twig and wrap their roots around whatever's around, and that's it. So they want a very quick, wet, dry as far as their roots go, but they like to be humid. I cannot provide that in my setup. It isn't going to happen. No way. Now, I did see a way of trying to get around this, which is to put the Tolumnia, completely bare rooted, into a mesh pot, like that. And then you put that mesh pot inside another pot, and you surround the two with bark or bark moss and whatever else. So you surround the mesh pot within this pot with something that will retain some moisture. That will allow the Tolumnia to stay humid, which it can't any other way. Certainly under my setup, it's not going to get 80 or 90% humidity. Cannot. But it's bare rooted. I haven't got to worry about anything else. So I'm going to try that. This, I'm afraid, is the one that I am, in my opinion, most likely to lose. But we'll see. You can only give it a whirl and see how you go. I don't know. I can't honestly think of another way to do it, because I can't even see which way up it's been. You've got a new growth at this end. Where are we? Come here. You've got a new growth at that end, you've got a new growth at this end. But the indications are it's been growing that way up. So why it suddenly pushed something out down here, and this is obviously the way it's going. You've actually got two growing tips here. So I'm not sure. I think I'm almost certainly going to have to sacrifice this bottom end, because I don't know how I'm going to do it any other way. So I've got to try something, and try that, put it in there like that, and hope that it'll be able to get all the nourishment, moisture and everything else that it wants. And then we'll give it a whirl. So let's start with the Bulbophyllum fascinator. I think what I'm going to do is take that aborted spike off. It'll give me a little bit more room to play with. I'm going to take that off. It's like that. It was alive, but I don't think it was going to branch. If it was, well, so be it. But I've got a new growth with a root starting, so I'm happy with that. I can get that in there now, and we can see about getting some moss in. I've got a little bit of moss from the previous potting I can start with, and I've got some more in soak over behind where I'm working. I don't want this to get compacted. I want it to stay really moist and open. I'd much rather just tuck bits of moss around it, put a short stake in there to hold it in place so the roots can sort themselves out. Yeah, that'll do the job, I think. So Do a touch of waste knot, one knot. As I understand it, one thing no orchid likes is to feel its roots moving around too much. They don't progress if it's not comfortable. And all that's doing is just stabilising it a little bit. But I've got roots exposed, so I'm going to put a little bit of moss from this fresh batch, which I'm going to wring out well before I use it. As I say, the last thing I want is for this to get all compacted and just too harsh. Just tucking enough in. Now, I am slightly nervous, it's got to be said, because I'm going to be burying some pseudobulbs. But at least with this, I don't have to, because I can tuck the moss in and try as best I can to leave as much of those pseudobulbs exposed. So let me show you what I mean. I've put moss, come here, I wish I could work out how to position these things just like that. Right, there's the new growth, and I've got moss up as far as that goes. Now bearing in mind this thing climbs, my other bulbophyllums climbed a little bit, not always, but it can. So what I've done with that is all where you've got pseudobulbs that have got roots on and good leaves and look fairly recent, I've put moss in, and perhaps room for a little bit more moss just there. Not too much, not a lot. I'm just tucking it in. But down here, where we've got a couple of pseudobulbs that aren't as high as the others, a bit older, possibly next time it gets looked at, they'll get fetched off. But I think at that, we've got a chance to see how we go with that, and that's Bulbophyllum fascinator. Right, I really don't think this is going to do well if I just dunk it in there like that and just trust the luck. It isn't going to happen. Not going to. The best I can do is lay it flat and let it sort itself out afterwards. If I'm going to put a layer of moss on the top of this, I've got to make sure that I've got plenty of drainage underneath it. I am very short of bark. It's going to be, as I said the other day when I was looking at things, something of the case it's going to have kind of dribs and drabs of bags I've already got. I can't avoid it. Little bits at the bottom of a bag But I think that should, I hope, give it a base that will drain. I don't want this to, I mean, we know what dendrobiums are like. They don't want to stay dry for wet for very long. None of them like that. So I am going to try and get away with putting in the thinnest layer of moss I can possibly get across the top of here. A very thin layer, something that's just going to stay moist and no more. I'm not going to put a lot in, just a wee bit. I don't think I could get a lot less in there. That's only like one layer thick, and my idea is that I put it in like that, and I'll pin it down so that it doesn't move about, and hope that the roots will start to run down. If the roots extend, because we've got roots underneath, it's got moisture to go for, so I can only hope that that will put roots down into the moss. Might want a little bit more on one side, in exactly the same way I've just done that with the bulbophyllum. If I put a bit there, I've got some at one end that cannot be other than slightly higher. So if I've got moss up against the root or close to the root, I've got to hope that that root will start to go down fairly soon, and the ones that are at the back will try and extend down into it. That's all I can do, not really very much else. I daren't drown it in moss. I've possibly put too much on as it is, but we can only see how it gets on. I need to do something to hold it in place, and I don't think that a stake is going to do the job, not really. So I'm just going to use these offcuts of tying wire. Just going to press it down like that. That one's not working. Never mind, that will help. Don't know whether I've done the right thing or not with this. I can only keep my fingers crossed. So anyway, that's Dendrobium jenkinsii. Now I discovered this Tolumnia, I think I must have misread the label. Didn't make a lot of sense when I was saying Horkensiana, because Iana tends to mean it's named after somebody, and I've never heard of a Hawkins as a surname, and it's not. It's Hawks Tolumnia. So this is going to be tricky, I think, because I'm going to try and get that in there with some bark, and I think some of that moss. If it wants a lot of, I'm not going to put a lot of moss in, because if I put a lot of moss in, everything's going to stay wringing wet, and I don't want that, really don't want that. But I think it's going to want some, nothing left in that bag. That's one for the scrappy. Not much in that one either. So, what do I use? Well, my complaint with Westland's orchid mix is that it screws with the drainage. It doesn't. There's a lot of fine in the in its mix-up in this particular bag anyway. The first bag wasn't as bad, and that means that if you're not very careful you end up with absolutely zero drainage. But this time we actually want to encourage water retention, so I'm going to put some of this Westland around the outside. Yes, it's gone into the middle, I'm not worried about that, I can get that out afterwards. I'll be able to get some more of this. Oh, that's really bad, that is. There's a lot of fines there. Right, I'm not going to bother with any more out of there. All the fines has gone into the bottom. I'll get a new bag. And we'll see if this is any better. I hope it will be. Well, I will say it's better than I'm to the bottom of that other bag, but it's still quite fine. Now, although I mutter about the Westland compost, I've got some orchids that do like it. And those are the vigorous oncidium types. If you've got a vigorous oncidium, like a Catatanti, or a twinkle that grows like a weed, that's fine. It'll chuck roots at it, you'll have lots of roots, and they'll go down into your into the medium, whatever it is, and they like it. In fact, I'll show you in a minute, my Catatanti has put roots all the way through, and it, even at this time of year when it's not as hot as it's going to be, I'm watering it 2 or 3 times a week. It is going through water like we're going to have a shortage next week. Right, I've not tried this before, never kept it along here before, which is about as much as I can say for anything. I hope that with that, if I put some water through it, yeah, it's draining fairly well. It probably isn't going to get as moist as it perhaps needs to straight away. I'm not going to try and dunk it. Don't think that would be great. But I think because it's bare rooted, you just plonk it. From what I've seen, the idea is that you simply put the Phalaenopsis into the top of this, like that, and then let the roots do what the roots want to do. I don't know. It's very difficult to know what to do, and I'm at a complete loss with this. But anyway, that is Phalaenopsis Hawksiana. And we'll have to see whether it survives or not. So, once again, I will say thanks to Zane Rapper. I think she's done me a real favour with these 4 plants. I mean, that Phalaenopsis, don't think it's flowered, can't see any signs of an old spike. We've got new roots coming, we've got new roots, we've got a new leaf, so that's going to want lots of fertiliser. That's getting ready for a dunking. But yes, we're doing all right with those, I think. So, I hope that's been of reasonable interest, and I will see you next time. Bye.